In today's video, we're looking at all the latest trade rumors concerning teams like the Bruins, the Canes, and the Lightning. We have the latest updates from the last board meetings concerning the return to play for 2021 season. And could the San Jose Sharks be forced to move? There's been some interesting developments that could force their hand. We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today from around the league. First up, I want to talk about a couple of free agents. We have Mikhail Sergachev, a longtime NHL veteran, yet to sign an NHL contract. There is talk he could find himself playing either between the Swiss League or over in Sweden. I mean, there's still a slim possibility he could sign an NHL contract. I'm a little bit surprised he hasn't found work in the NHL here as of yet. He could decide to hold out a few more weeks as we get closer to having the new season finalized when training camps are going to open. We very well could find a situation where teams might make some final decisions here and get an extra player or two signed. So we could see a few more guys get contracts, but Soderberg could very well head over to Europe if he doesn't find NHL work here in the next little bit. Now, another free agent as well that's still out there and is pretty good player in my opinion is Sami Vatanen. There is talk that he could actually still possibly return to the Carolina Hurricanes. A recent interview conducted by GM Don Waddell has indicated that he's still kept in contact with Vatanen and that there is a possibility and there is interest there on Carolina's side to possibly bring him back, but they would have to create a little bit of cap space because unless he's signing for league minimum, and even then there's still barely enough room, that's not really going to be possible. So unless Carolina decides to move out something else, which is possible, of course, then bringing them back will be pretty difficult. But they're also expected to be opening up contract extension talks with right-shot defenseman Dougie Hamilton. There is belief that, based on what Waddell had to say in the recent interview, that the Canes would like to lock him up longer term. And obviously we haven't seen too many long-term contracts this offseason, but they feel that Hamilton's a player they want to keep in the fold long term, and they'd like to get something hammered out. They haven't really opened negotiations here as of yet, but Waddell indicated that Hamilton is expected to return to the Carolina area in the next week, and they will open up negotiations once he returns, and then we'll see where things go. But I'd like to get something hammered out and get him locked up before the season gets underway. So we could see a Dougie Hamilton extension come here with the Carolina Hurricanes long term in the next few weeks. Now, I also want to touch on the Boston Bruins. There's a lot of talk about the future of Tuukka Rask with the Bruins. Of course, he's got 1 year left on his contract. There's lots of questions that arose after he left the NHL bubble during the 2020 playoffs. Of course, we now know what happened. It was a family emergency, and ultimately Tuukka Rask is expected to be back with Boston. Now, a recent interview from Bruce Cassidy, the head coach of the Bruins, said they're ready to move forward with Rask and Halak as their goaltending tandem. Of course, they don't really know the future beyond the current season that's coming up here because both those goalies will be UFAs at season's end. Now, of course, they do have some interesting and solid goalie prospects here, in my opinion, including Dan Vladimir, who very well could make the jump and should be the first call-up option, at least in my opinion, during the upcoming season, should Halak or Rask be out with any kind of injuries for any period of time. But obviously getting them through one more year will give their youth another year to develop as well. And they can kind of reevaluate where things are at. Tuukka Rask is approaching his mid-30s and has indicated that he's not really sure how long he wants to play. There was even talks and hints at retirement that could come at the end of the contract. Now, he's also kind of made more comments since then, kind of clarifying things, saying that he didn't really say that he was going to retire. It's just something he didn't know what his future was going to hold. So it's difficult to say if he continues to play either with Boston or at all beyond the coming season. But they are fully prepared here to move forward with him as their starting goaltender. And at this point, we're not expecting to see a Tuukka Rask trade, even though he had been in the rumor mill previously. Unless Boston, for some reason, has a bad season and is nowhere near contention, which is obviously not expected. But you never know. I mean, they are going through some injuries during this offseason that could impact things. If that's the case, maybe a Rask trade could happen later on towards the deadline or something. But at that point, even I'd be surprised if it did. And I think the Bruins will reevaluate their goaltending situation come this time next season. Now, we also have the latest updates here from Renaud Lavoie of TVA Sports on the Tampa Bay Lightning, indicated that they should be expected to make some moves here in the not-too-distant future. Tampa Bay is a team who is probably in the worst salary cap situation around the entire NHL. They've got several key restricted free agents that need contracts. None of them had arbitration rights, so they couldn't get things done that way. And at this point, they just don't have anywhere near the space to sign them. They need to move out as many as 2 significant players in each of those deals. Teams are going to be kind of going through like an extortion phase here, where they're going to be wanting to get extra draft picks and prospects and other things out of these teams here, like Tampa, to make those deals happen if they're going to be taking on these players. Obviously, they might not be able to trade the players that they really prefer to. As I mentioned before, they've been trying to find a move for Tyler Johnson for quite some time. And because they have so many players with no trade clauses, that complicates things. And it's from the other teams that are willing to work with them's perspective, they're going to want certain players, and they might want the stronger players that Tampa Bay would probably prefer not to move. At this point, they're the Stanley Cup champions. They're in deep trouble with the salary cap. Other teams are not just going to come along and bail them out without getting something pretty significant for their own team. So Tampa Bay is going to be forced here to trade some guys, and they might not have a choice but to trade at least one of these RFAs. Maybe can they really afford to keep Cirelli and Sergachev both? I mean, Eric Chernak will be a little bit easier to look after and get signed, but when it comes to those other 2 players, they're going to be looking for some pretty significant money. Even though they might prefer to move out Tyler Johnson, Alex Killorn, because of their contracts and the clauses that they've given them, that's kind of hard to do unless they're willing to play ball. And if they're not, they're going to lose significant pieces here. And teams are also, like I said, they're going to be expecting more to take salary on. According to the report from Renaud Lavoie, he's indicating the Lightning are expected here to be having talks with teams like the Los Angeles Kings, the Nashville Predators, and the New Jersey Devils. And like I said, should be expecting at least 1, if not probably 2, significant players traded out in the next few weeks. Of course, as we get closer to the 2021 season getting finalized and a start date and knowing when camps open, it just makes the clock ticking here on when they need to become cap compliant. So they're going to have to do something in the near future, or these RFAs are not going to have any choice but to sit out, which is bad for the team, bad for the players, bad all around here as well. So clearly they don't want that to happen. The league probably would want that to happen either. They don't want too many players having to sit out, but where they don't have arbitration rights, you know, it's a real possibility. They could, if they don't trade them or trade enough players out to create the space, if they can't sign these players, those players aren't going to be able to play, which, like I said, is just a bad situation. But Lavoie seems to indicate here that the Lightning should have a couple significant moves completed here in the next couple of weeks. Now, there's some interesting developments going on in San Jose as well, which could, unfortunately, cause the Sharks to consider having to relocate at the end of the day here, which is not something that's going to happen like immediately, but there is a lot of developments and construction going on in the area, which is having some major impacts on San Jose and the Sharks and the SAP Center, and there is some petitions going on to the city of San Jose to make some changes here. A lot of redevelopments going on. Google apparently has a massive project going on in the area, and it's quite the scenario that, like I said, unfortunately could force the Sharks out of San Jose. I mean, if they had to find a new home, I mean, it's hard to say where exactly they would go. I mean, they technically do not want to leave San Jose, and they do not want to leave the area, but they might have to go, you know, I'm not sure what the next closest area would be where they could either make arrangements on a new arena or if there's any other arenas anywhere close. I mean, they'd probably have to start planning ahead. Now, they have a lease on the SAP Center. I believe it's until 2024 or 5, so they should be able to stay for the next few years while this construction project continues, because it's such a massive thing. It's going to take years to completely unfold here, but it's a situation worth monitoring in San Jose that they could possibly be forced to move, and I'm really not sure where they would go or what would happen, but they might be looking for solutions here, so keep an eye on the Sharks. Now, of course, as well, we were hoping to get an announcement as early as Thursday evening or Friday here today with an announcement on the new season for 2021, but that has not come yet. We had the NHL Board of Governors meeting just the other day, but lots of good talk, lots of things come from it, but not yet ready to make an announcement. Obviously, they still need to have more talks with the players. One thing that did come from it was that it seems as though more teams have an appetite for playing games in their own arena rather than a hybrid bubble situation where I mentioned that there would be 4 divisions, which is still likely going to be the alignment, but instead of having like a one city kind of be like the hub where teams kind of be filtered in and out, they all want to play games in their own arenas, obviously with at least limited fans, like the NBA plans to do, and as well as the NFL, and they're going to try to do the same thing as what the main preference at least appears to be at this point in time, which only makes sense. If you can get even some fans in the arena to sell some tickets, that's better than nothing at all. And obviously, you know, with teams being able to use their own facilities, also due to sponsorship deals, as it plays a role in all this as well. it could certainly have a major impact, but at the same time, you have to wonder, how safe is it going to be? How more likely, I guess, would it possibly be to have an outbreak or something to that effect? It's just difficult to say from a health perspective how successful it'll be. Obviously, it's not an airtight bubble, which you can't expect anyways for an entire year. So either way, there's a lot of things that still need to be ironed out, including the possibility here that the players might have to be forced to take a prorated salary, because obviously when their contracts are signed, that's assuming an 82-game schedule. Now, of course, the players have already deferred salary for next year to help the owner's bottom line. They're already, going to be paying more escrow, because that's all going to be stretched out here. Clearly there's already a lot of money. As it is with an 82-game schedule, the players are only going to get about 72% of their income next year, with part of that coming back to them down the road, obviously because of the deferral. But 72% of what you signed for is still a lot less. And of course, you pay your taxes and everything out of that, in most places, except for a couple of, key places where the tax amounts are really low or minuscule. But, really that really cuts into their bottom line. So if they only get paid a portion of that based on the number of games played, if the NHL goes with a 50 or 60 game schedule, that could be a problem. I mean, the players are expecting to get their full incomes here, and there could be some pushback around that. And apparently there's even rumors that there's about 3 to 5 owners apparently that said if they have to pay players full salaries next year, and they can't have fans in attendance as well, and not play full games, like a full 82-game schedule, that they could not survive. So essentially they're saying, if I have to pay a full salary that we've agreed to here based on an 82-game schedule, but only play, say, 60 games, and if I can't have, full fans in attendance to make up the revenue, we might not be able to cover the check. I mean, that's bad news all around. Now, of course, I don't know what owners they are. That's just something that was kind of mentioned here as a rumor that came from that meeting. So I guess we will see, what kind of deals we get. But that's certainly something that has come up in other sports as well, about prorated salaries if you don't play a full schedule. And that could be a sticking point here in bone of contention, that something's going to have to be ironed out between the players and the owners to kind of make sure that both sides kind of get something fair out of this. Obviously, the players deserve to get paid, but do you deserve to get paid when you're not doing that amount of work? And there's a lot of questions goes up in the air here, and obviously a lot of legalities as well. Maybe the players have to defer a little bit extra salary instead of taking a cut. Maybe they just get paid a little late. I don't know. There's got to be some kind of give and take here, but we've seen this in other sports be something that had to be ironed out, and it's going to be an issue and have to be ironed out for the NHL and the PA as well. There's no doubt about that. Players are looking for their full incomes, and I don't completely blame them. But at the end of the day, they got to do what's right and what balances out so that everybody survives. Because at the end of the day, one without the other is just no good. So let me know your thoughts on all the latest talk from today's video, and we'll discuss further down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.